Well, alright guys, I just finished up watching Split, so as per usual, my quick thoughts. This is a movie I had really been wanting to check out because I'd been hearing such great things, and it's an M. Night movie, and when it comes to M. Night movies, they're usually not very good. Yes, Sixth Sense was amazing, Unbreakable was really good as well, Signs I thought was okay, and The Village, yeah, not so much either, and really everything after that just went way downhill. I felt that his career did constantly go downhill. He was on top with Sixth Sense, which was a really good movie. Unbreakable was really good as well, but not quite as good, but still really good, and then it just another step down, just over and over and over again until he pretty much hit rock bottom. I mean, M. Night movies are just notoriously bad, unfortunately, but I've been hearing such good things about this, and even up to the point where people were saying M. Night is back, so I had to see this movie, and it was pretty good. I'm actually really impressed by this. I actually really enjoyed it. Now, I'm not saying this movie was brilliant or amazing or one of the best things I've ever seen or his best work or anything like that, but it was still really enjoyable. I love the idea of this character with multiple personalities and a multiple personality disease and whatnot, which apparently people who actually have that are not too thrilled about this movie. It doesn't necessarily paint them in the best light, but the idea of people with that disorder actually being able to control the different personalities and to the point where if a person's blind but they have a personality of a person who's not blind, that other split personality can actually see, and weird things like that, things like somebody one person being diabetic but the other person, the other personality not, weird things how they can actually control these different personalities and they're actually real personalities and they can change their body and stuff. It's really weird and interesting and a really cool theory, and just a really interesting idea to work with, and makes James McAvoy's character really fun and interesting, and I loved it for that. Unfortunately, in this movie, though, he has a couple personalities that aren't really the best people, and unfortunately he lets them get the best of him, and he ends up kidnapping these three girls and taking advantage of them, and then we end up finding out his whole plan with them. So this is definitely I would say a thriller. I don't necessarily say a horror movie. It's a lot more of a thriller, I would say, and a very interesting one as well, with these girls being captured and them wanting to escape, and you trying to figure out what exactly James McAvoy's character, what's going on here with his split personality disorder. How's that playing out? And they keep hinting at the fact that possibly people with this disorder are something greater than some other higher being, almost as if they were some kind of, I don't know, mutant or a comic book character. Wink wink, nudge nudge. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about, or if you've read anything about this, or if you heard anything about this. I'm sure many of you by now know the tie-in with this movie. I guess at the end I'll kind of spoil that for you guys if you don't know, so be forewarned. I'll do some spoilers at the end. But I love that idea, and it's really interesting to try to figure out, if what they're talking about is an actual thing. Is James McAvoy's character just kind of crazy with this disease, or is he something special, a higher being who can really control these different personalities and whatnot? And what is he going to do to these girls? He keeps talking about ritual food and stuff like that, and what does that mean? Is he going to feed them to somebody? Is he going to eat them? What's going to happen? Is he going to feed something to them? Who knows what's going to happen here? And of course there's this his psychiatrist who's trying to help him out and whatnot, and she's getting way too involved where it's not necessarily going to work out so well for her in the end. And it's a really interesting thriller of a movie, and I really liked it for that. It was very entertaining. It kept me on the edge of my seat at many a times, and even though, again, I'm not saying it's the best movie ever, and again, it didn't blow me away. I'm not going to say, oh, you gotta check this movie out, it's the best thing ever. I am definitely not going to say that. I will say, though, if you like M. Night movies and you want to see an actual good one, this one's worth checking out. It was an enjoyable movie, and if you have any interest in seeing it whatsoever, I would say yes, definitely see Split. For the most part, probably what you've been hearing about the movie, it's lived up to all the hype. This movie, again, was getting tons of hype, and that's why I really wanted to see this film, and again, for the most part, it lived up to it. Some people were really saying really good things about this movie, which I thought maybe were a bit too much, but still, it deserves praise because, yes, M. Night, I guess you could say he's back because he actually made a good movie, and it's nice to see that. I loved it. I loved all the actors and whatnot in this movie. Like, everybody in this movie was great at what they were doing. So all right, let's get into the ending of the movie. So some spoilers here, but again, how have you not heard about this by now? Even I had heard about the tie-in here. So all right. You've been forewarned. So, at the end of the movie, it's interesting because, and I was getting worried. Okay, I will fully admit, my wife and I were watching this together, and I turned to her and said, "Oh no, this is an M. Night movie. This could be going south very, very quickly," because they're talking about this I think like 24th personality he has, where it's like the beast, like this monster that he's gonna turn into. And I'm like, if he actually turns into a freaking monster, this movie has officially just become ruined. And had that happen, I would have been like, yep, this is an M. Night movie. Because his movies tend to do that a lot, where, it's like, all right, this isn't too bad, and then he destroys his film by doing something really stupid, or, ooh, it's an M. Night movie, there's gotta be a twist, and this twist ends up just killing the entire film. It happens so much with M. Night movies, and I was really worried. Luckily, that did not happen, sort of. He actually does have this other personality that is like this beast creature, and he kind of takes on, he builds muscles, his skin can get really tough. They say like it's thicker than like a rhinoceros skin, so he can get shot at, which he does, and it breaks open his skin, but his muscle is still there, and he still survives it. Things like that. He has like super strength and super speed and whatnot. So he's got all this stuff that in a way you can kind of say is somewhat, sort of, at least believable enough. I mean, maybe not to the point where you actually think it's happening, but in the comic book world, again, we'll get into that in a second, maybe you could take this seriously, or it's at least a little bit believable. So I like that. They didn't go overboard with it. They made him get these more strength. They made him get muscles. They made him fast. They made him really strong and whatnot, and turn into this creature who ends up feeding on these girls. Two of them at least, anyway. The two in their underwear. He ends up feeding on them, and it's interesting, and I like the fact that they didn't go too overboard with it. They kept it in a realm of normalcy, which didn't go too nuts. Because again, had he actually turned into some kind of beast or something like that, like an actual I'm talking like an actual creature, it would have ruined the entire film. I mean, if it would have been him turning into the Wolfman, essentially, it would have ruined the entire film. But they didn't go that route, and I like that. It reminded me of Bane a little bit, but otherwise, it was pretty good how they did it. I praise M. Night for not going too crazy with it. That was a good direction to go. So I like that idea, and it was very interesting. So at the end of the movie, what ends up happening is, of course, he gets found out. The one girl ends up getting away. It's sort of this thing where she was abused and he was abused, and that's why he has this disorder, because he was abused as a child, and he finds out that she was abused too at the very end. Like, Ray's about to kill her, and he's like, "Oh, you're a higher being as well," and then backs off her because he realizes that they both kind of went through the same thing as a child. And it's kind of interesting and whatnot. They keep pointing out the fact that she had been abused and he had been abused, and you kind of know something's going to go on there. The fact that they both kind of had a similar childhood and whatnot, something's going to happen. And of course, at the end, they do kind of come together. With him realizing that, again, she was abused as well, and letting her live and escape. And of course, when she does escape, she ends up somebody actually finds her, but then they end up calling the cops and whatnot and find these other dead bodies, and they know who did it, but he escaped. He's still on the loose. And at the very end, they're in a diner, and they give him this. They say, oh, they're calling him now. I forget what name they give him, but they give him a name as the media always does when there's a killer or somebody crazy out there. They give him some kind of name because there's money in that. So they give him a name, and somebody says, "Oh, that kind of reminds me of this. There was this guy like X amount of years ago who he was like in a wheelchair, and what was the name they gave him?" And they pan past them, and it's Bruce Willis coming back to revise his character from Unbreakable, and he's like, Mr. Glass. And I was like, yes, that's awesome. That's so cool. So these movies are linked together, and I love that. And to be completely honest, for some reason, I had forgotten about that. I do remember hearing about that, but for some reason, I forgot about it. I had completely forgot going into this movie that these two movies were linked. At the very end, I was like, oh my gosh, it was awesome to see that, because I completely had forgotten about that, and that was great. And from what I hear, M. Night is working on yet another movie. This is going to be like a trilogy. And apparently this is supposed to have James McAvoy, Samuel Jackson, Bruce Willis, like all these people are coming back to revise their roles and whatnot. And it's going to be like this whole mashup movie, which I think is going to be really cool. And I'm very excited to see where they go with that. Sounds pretty interesting. So this whole like kind of comic book sort of world that they kind of live in. And I think it's really cool. There's these two, villains now. Like what's Bruce Willis going to do? He's going to be like, he's going to, is he going to be, the unbreakable guy who's going to save this, or is the I can't remember her name. I'm sorry, the girl from The Witch. Is she going to come back to, maybe she has some sort of powers too. We don't know, but I'm really excited to see where they go with this story because I really liked Unbreakable, and I think this is pretty much up to the level of Unbreakable. If you like Unbreakable, you're probably going to like Split. Two different types of movies. They have very different feelings. Think of it almost kind of like I'm trying to think of what I was going to say. Why am I drawing a blank? Cloverfield and 10 Cloverfield Lane. See, I knew it would come to me. Think of it kind of like that, where the two movies have a very different feel, but they obviously take place in the same, at the same time and at the same, in the same world and whatnot. Sort of the same thing with Unbreakable and Split. Two movies have a very different feel, but they're both part of the same story. And I think that's really, really cool and very enjoyable. And again, I cannot wait to see how they come together. That should be a lot of fun. So if you like Unbreakable, you're probably going to enjoy Split, I would say. Kind of both on the same level of goodness. They're both great movies, and I really do recommend both of them. If you haven't seen Unbreakable, see that movie before you see this. I know I just did a bunch of spoilers for you with this movie being linked to it, but regardless, see Unbreakable first, and then watch this movie. I would highly recommend doing it that way. But again, great movie, fantastic. Oh, you don't actually need to see Unbreakable to understand this movie, but I think the ending's going to make more sense to you. Oh, speaking about endings, this has an alternate ending. Don't bother watching it. It's literally like 30 seconds, and it makes no sense, and it's like, why was that even shot? And I have a hard time believing that even was an alternate ending, because it's 30 seconds. Like, how was that an alternate ending? My wife and I looked at each other like, what was that? Just a deleted scene? So, don't bother even watching that. So again, Split, I would definitely say it is a movie to check out. Again, not the greatest movie ever. It's deserving of the hype it was getting, but not maybe as much hype as it was getting, but still definitely deserving of praise. M. Night, is he back? We will see, but he's definitely made another good movie, and it's nice to see that because it's about darn time. I'm so sick of bad M. Night movies, and to see one that was actually enjoyable, I was pretty happy. So I would definitely recommend checking this movie out, especially if you liked Unbreakable. You're going to enjoy this. Also, of course, the whole thing shot in the Philadelphia area. So for me, that's always a lot of fun. That's the one thing I like about M. Night movies is that even if I'm watching it and thinking, oh my God, this is like the worst movie ever, I'm also watching and going, oh, I know that location, and I know that location. Like in this movie, it starts out, they're at the King of Prussia Mall, and I'm like, that's the mall. Like I recognize it right away. And of course, James McAvoy character lives at the Philadelphia Zoo, and I recognize that. All the, Fairmount Park, and the Philadelphia Art Museum, and little things like that I recognize, all these different spots, and that was a lot of fun. That's one of the things I love about M. Night movies is the fact that they're all shot in the area, in the Philadelphia area, and many of these places I've been to, or I recognize, or I live right by, and then I get really mad because I'm like, they were obviously filming probably that scene at the mall when I was working. This is back, that would have been back when I was still working in the mailroom, and I was literally like 5 minutes away down the street, and I probably could have seen it happening, so kind of drives me nuts that I didn't know what was going on. But anyway, so I love his movies for that reason, but again, usually they're pretty bad, but at least I can have some fun with it. This one, I was having fun with it, pointing out the areas, and it was also good. So, alright, I'm not going to ramble on anymore. I'm just going to say Split, definitely see it. Fun movie. If you like M. Night movies, it is one to check out, and if you're like me and you like M. Night's like first two movies, and then everything I guess I can't say first two, because he had that one with Rosie O'Donnell. Wasn't that like his first movie? That wasn't very good. I can't even remember the name of it. Anyway, so if you like Sixth Sense, and you like Unbreakable, maybe you like Signs and The Village as well, this is one you gotta see. I assure you it's much better than the recent garbage that he has pushed out, and he does not ruin it at the end by having James McAvoy actually turn into a creature. Thank God. So, Split. Check it out.